The Military Times organization named the Quinnipiac University School of Business the best business school for veterans in the state of Connecticut. Chipotle lovers had to go a day without their favorite burritos.
And passengers were in a bit of danger as they headed back to shore.
But first, the primaries are heating up in New Hampshire. Sean Clasby has the national. If you aren't already excited about this year's QU versus Yale game, you should be, especially if you're a senior. This is the first time Quinnipiac has faced Yale as a #1 seed since we lost the national championship game at Pittsburgh just a short 3 years ago. Quinnipiac is in position to have another deep tournament run, and it would be sweet redemption for freshmen who witnessed the heartbreaking loss to Yale in the championship game. That wasn't the biggest headline on Sunday. The 58th annual of the Great American Race was underway at Daytona. The Daytona 500 was run on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and although there wasn't a big wreck like everyone expected, the finish was still spectacular. Denny Hamlin passed Martin Truex Jr. right before the line to capture the photo finish ending. He beat Truex Jr. by 1/100th of a second, the closest victory in any Daytona 500 finish.
Let me first make a very profound statement in that I will tell you I think high school football in Connecticut is much safer than any other state in the country.
During a season, a professional football player can receive up to 1,500 blows to the head. Even with professional equipment, the likelihood of getting a concussion is very high. 60% of all concussions are due to football. This is a major problem facing the NFL as well as high school sports. However, there are safety measures in place to try to limit the number of concussions for student athletes. One of the biggest factors is the type of helmet they wear. The three major brands of helmets they wear are Riddell, Schutt, and Zenith.
So each school is given their own choice and selection based on their needs and their research and what they do.
Even with the best safety equipment, there are still other measures in place to reduce the amount of injuries. The Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference requires mandatory training for all athletic directors and coaches.
It shows them techniques on how to use, how to be able to coach and teach and practice without using head and without using contact.
Kids are limited to the number of quarters they can play per week. It's a 6-quarter limit, and a certain amount of plays counts as a quarter.
The three levels of football, freshman, junior varsity, and varsity, all happen within a 3-day window of each other. This is to make sure kids cannot play at each level, which would increase the risk of injury. There are also a limited number of contact hours a player can have. There are bye weeks implemented into the schedule and a limit on the number of drills they can do in practice. Concussion research has progressed over the years, and many myths have been proven false.
People also need to understand that you don't have to be knocked out to have a concussion. You don't have to be dazed and confused to have a concussion. Symptoms are all over the spectrum.
Starting this year, the CIAC is requiring all Connecticut schools to record surveillance data into an online program, which is tied to a national database. This will be the first step into monitoring young athletes and progression toward fewer injuries.
So while there are a lot of safety measures in place to help protect students, there are still a lot of people who have valid concerns about this sport.
According to the National Federation of State High School Associations, a report found that nationwide participation has declined in the last 7 years. For Quinnipiac, this has been Austin Basile reporting. Many roads in Hamden have been repaved for this upcoming winter season. The process of getting a road repaved takes a while, not just in the sense of the actual pavement, but picking the right roads that are at the highest priority.
There's a lot of different criteria that's used to pick what streets get paved. Number one, we try to be fair throughout the town and pave from all different areas on a need basis. Obviously, we try to keep our main roads paved. Those are the most traveled roads, so those are a high priority on our list, and then we move out from there.
Some residents aren't too happy with the repaving, and although the road looks great, it seems now to be a bit more of an inconvenience for some.
Well, they just stuck a notice on the telephone pole. They didn't tell anybody individually, they just put a little notice on the telephone pole that the road work was going to be done. And there was a little big of a dip on the driveway because there was maybe like a 3-inch gap now between where it was milled, and it was just, bumping the tires and scraping the front of the car.
In total, 42 roads were repaved over the course of just a few months.
Now the process of getting a road repaved does take a little while, but what about the money? How is it funded and where is it coming from?
The money comes from bonds. The town of Hamden sells bonds, and the money raised from the sale of those bonds is the same money that funds these projects. Overall, there will be no tax increases, and the road paving project has already concluded. For questions about roads in Hamden, you can visit the Department of Public Works website. However, the Hamden Public Works Department is not responsible for Whitney Ave, Dixwell Ave, State Street, and Arch Street. Those are state-controlled roads. For any questions regarding those roads, you can contact the State Department of Transportation. For Quinnipiac, this has been Austin Basile. Friends of the New Haven Animal Shelter, our local animal adoption center, focused on finding you the right pet to bring home. Whether it is a dog or a cat, their primary focus is to find these animals loving homes. With a take-in rate of almost 1,500 dogs and cats a year, Friends of the New Haven Animal Shelter has a whopping 75% adoption rate. Compare that to the national average of 37%. It's hard enough to say no to these little guys, but trying to get them adopted is another thing. Let's find out what the tips and tricks are to get these little guys a home.
We just keep them until we can adopt them. And if the dog starts to get uncomfortable being in the shelter, we will transfer rather than destroy the dog.
Friends of the New Haven Animal Shelter also go out into parts of Hamden and do adoption events where they showcase some of the animals and provide information. It also gives some of the animals a chance to see something other than the shelter.
Socialize them, we foster them, we take them out on hikes. We don't want them to think that they're left alone in a kennel. That's not how that goes, so we get them out as often as possible.
The volunteers make sure to always keep a positive attitude and environment. They become invested in the animals' future.
It's just a good feeling to know that the dog might get adopted, and we have an adoption report, and everybody reads it to see who got adopted this week, because it's a good feeling to know you've been successful.
We are just overcome with emotion. It's like a kid going off to college, and that's how we feel about it.
The adoption events that are held aren't big in size, but the little animals somehow find a home. With nothing but a table and a cage, Friends of the New Haven Animal Shelter find a way to double the national pet adoption average. Something as tiny as this can create a big difference in someone's life. For Quinnipiac, this has been Austin Basile.